Hi, you're watching Hindustan Times, and I'm Aditi Prasad. And Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has landed in India for a 4 day long visit to strengthen bilateral ties. Sheikh Hasina is going to be holding an all important meeting with a summit actually with Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday. She's already met S. Shankar, our foreign minister. So a lot is on the cards, a lot is on the agenda, and I have with me two very, people that we wanted to have on this shows. We have Professor Syed Munir from IPAG in Bangladesh, and we have Deb Mukherjee, who is a former envoy from India to Bangladesh, and both of them here to sort of weigh in on what to expect from Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's visit to India, and of course, more importantly, how is this visit, which is actually Sheikh Hasina's first visit out of the country post the COVID situation. Professor Munir, is that
No, she has been to some visits post COVID, so but definitely not India. But no, she
right?
has she has gone out. There have been some international conferences, so she has. I mean, I think yeah,
Yes, she was at the UN last year,
right,
if
right,
I'm not mistaken.
right.
Absolutely.
UN
So
also
yes,
Glasgow, right.
right. So I think the first bilateral visit, so to speak, to India post this COVID situation and post a lot of developments within Bangladesh, including a problem with the economy, including the attacks on Hindus, which is sort of not which wasn't viewed very well here in India. So we're going to discuss all of that and how this visit of the Prime Minister, of the Bangladesh Prime Minister with Prime Minister Modi, the 3 day visit, how is it going to likely to reset India Bangladesh ties? Let me start with you, Professor Munir, and just ask you what is your sense about what's on the agenda? We all know. How do you see this playing out? Do you see a change, a markup in the India Bangladesh ties after this?
No, thank you so much, Aditi, for having me, and of course, my respect to Ambassador Dev Mukherjee, who brings a lot of wisdom and experience, particularly Bangladesh-India relationship. I think our relationship in the last 10, 12 years definitely has taken a momentum. Uh, Both countries realize you can change your friends, but you can't change your neighbors. So you have to find ways to live together. And a lot of positive momentum, trade, connectivity, energy, cultural activities, so on and so forth. But I guess some of the issues from the Bangladesh perspective have been, to be very honest, a little frustrating. Top of the list is Tista water. This has been hanging for last 11, 12 years. And as a Bangladeshi, and this is not just me, to see every time Indian Prime Minister comes, Chief Minister of West Bengal comes, and then there's a lot of expectation that nothing happens. So this has been going on and on. So that has been, for particularly our Prime Minister, who I think even Indian friends agree has gone out of the way to eliminate some of the thoughts in the relationship, some of the anti-Indian insurgency activities. She has uprooted them. She has made the borders more safe. She has been very pragmatic. So many had felt in certain cases those things could have been better reciprocated, particularly the Delhi Kolkata thing. And secondly, of course, as you know, trade, although heavily weighed in India's favor, we are hoping this CEPA thing, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, will hopefully lead to little more balance. And Bangladesh, graduating from the League of Developing Economies, will lose that duty-free, quota-free access, and hopefully, free trade agreement with India will help Bangladesh boost exports by a significant portion. Some studies say 180%, some say trade facilitation and transport costs are removed, even 300%. So there are reasons to be optimistic. But at the same time, I mean, those are the, some of the dark clouds in the horizon, which we hope will make some headway. Border killing is also an issue. And if you look at the numbers, it's not steadily going down. You have 10, then you have next year 40, then you have next year 20. So which is a cause of concern in Bangladesh. So I would say overall there is many reasons to be optimistic. And as you mentioned to the global scenario, these two countries need to find ways to deal with the energy crisis, and also many of the basic staple food prices have gone up: onion, rice, wheat. which these countries, two countries, heavily rely on. So there is under the change scenario since the Ukraine war and all that, Bangladesh, India need to even cooperate even more than before to make sure
Hmm.
the population. We both are very densely populated countries can sort of weather the storm. So these are my initial remarks, just to get the talk
Okay.
going.
Okay, that, yeah, that's a long list of things that you've sort of put out there, starting from Tista Waters to, of course, collaborating as far as on the economy front is concerned. Let me bring in Dev Mukherjee. So, in your opinion, the long list of things, including river water sharing, trade, which Professor Munir talked about. How far do you think, is especially the Tista thing? It's been hanging fire for quite a bit. The water sharing. How far do you think they are likely to get resolved in this visit?
Well, first, thank you for having me on this program. As Professor Munir knows, I have spent many, many years in that beautiful country. Now, you know, first, I would like to make one observation that I don't think we should expect great results from all these visits.
Hmm.
I think what South Asia needs, and this has been talked about, are visits from one friend to another, one head of state to another, as a matter of course, as happens in other parts of the world. Because if we raise our bar of expectations too high, then there are political consequences at home. Anyway, that was just by the way. Uh,
Hmm.
I would like to welcome Prime Minister Hasina to India once again. I'm glad she's here so that the two leaders can exchange frank views, frank opinions on the state of relations today. Both of them have, together and separately, described Indo Bangladesh relations as going through a golden phase.
Hmm.
And I think that describes it all. Now, as Professor Munir rightly said, and I appreciate the list that he gave of various items, there are issues to be resolved. Now, I think here we must first accept that two neighbors will always have issues. I mean, when I was in Bangladesh 25 years ago, and everyone thought that if Farakka and Ganga waters was out of the way, then we could live in harmony and friendship forever and forever. Farakka went out of the way 25 years ago. But there are
Hmm.
still issues, as is natural between neighbors. That's something that we have to accept and we have to live with. Now, you see, these expectations, the problem it creates is that I've been reading the Bangladesh press as I do regularly, and there is concern that Prime Minister Hasina will give away too much to India.
Hmm.
Now, this whole question of this transactional approach, without any basis necessarily, I think creates problems in our mind on how we approach a relationship. In other words, we can't approach it easily without any preconceived problems. Now, as to this visit, I think the last intergovernmental meeting have identified some new areas of cooperation. Some of them are quite exciting. I'm sure those will be taken up. But with regard to existing issues, I think the main elephant in the room is Tista. Now, I was dealing with Tista 40 years ago. So I have some bitter memories of
Hmm.
how we have both dealt with this issue. Now,
Right.
as you know, both India and Bangladesh had agreed to a formula 11 years ago. It was an agreed formula that unfortunately Prime Minister Manmohan Singh could not sign because of the objection from the West Bengal government. So I don't know where that will go, because even now, internally, relations between Delhi and Calcutta are not of the best. But besides that, all the other issues I think can be handled. I think this trade deficit, I don't want to speak too much about it, but you buy because it is convenient for you. You don't buy to do anyone a favor. So the important thing is increasing Bangladesh's exports to India. I mean, that really, or other
Right. We will.
value-added.
I'd like to talk separately about the economy, sir. Let's just talk about. We've spoken about Tista, but let's just also talk about the issue of Rohingyas, which Sheikh Hasina herself, in an interview to ANI, said that the Rohingya migrants are a big burden on Bangladesh, and the country is reaching out to the international community to ensure that they return to their homeland. Could she be seeking India, also should play a major role in resolving the issue? Is that something uh, that, because that is a challenge to her regime, the Rohingya refugees? Let me just first come to Professor Munir. What do you think is the Rohingya challenge that Sheikh Hasina is facing?
Aditi, I think the Rohingya issue is a shame on mankind today. The way we have all let them down, except Bangladesh, I think is completely disgraceful. Having said that, we come to the realities of diplomacy and realpolitik. India has India also has security interests vis-a-vis Myanmar. We all
Hmm.
know that. And there are limits beyond which we really cannot push Myanmar. We can try to persuade them. I sincerely hope we will. And in fact, even in Prime Minister Hasina's last visit to Delhi 3 years ago, I was looking at what I wrote after that. Rohingya issue had been, I think, on top of the list at that
Right.
time.
Professor
So
Munir, what do you
nothing,
think?
nothing has
Let me,
changed.
right, let me bring in Professor Munir at this point.
I,
So,
I,
yes,
I think
Professor Munir.
I think it would remind India to be perhaps more energetic on this issue. But as I explained, because of India's own obvious security considerations,
True, true.
I am not sure how much she can move. The one country which can, because of the dependence of Myanmar on that country in many respects, is our mutual northern neighbor. Whether they can be persuaded to move in the matter, I think would be critical to the issue.
All right. Let me just bring in Professor Munir at this point. Professor Munir, what do you think about the issue of Rohingyas? How much of a matter? And by Sheikh Hasina's own admission, she might be seeking India's help on the issue.
Let me put aside the diplomatic norms, which of course is a forte of Sir. I'll be very speaking in a plain language. In school days, we had a say, everybody's friend is nobody's friend.
Hmm.
So I think sometimes India risks moving into that territory. I'll go by simple facts. India is the world's largest democracy. Nothing comparable to what Myanmar represents, particularly with the current regime, right? Okay. And it was an open case of genocide. I mean, the way they executed the pushback. I mean, if you remember what happened, even when they were fleeing, there were mines planted even in the road they were using to flee to Bangladesh. Mission was very clear. They don't dare to come back, right? Then what happened, if you recall at that time, in the immediate aftermath of the 2017 persecution of Rohingyas, for Bangladesh to see the Indian Prime Minister standing next to Aung San Suu Kyi and supporting uh, action against terrorists did not go well here, because we felt this is not what we expect from the leader of the largest democracy when people are being shot at. I'll be very blunt about it. Now, going forward, Myanmar is under the firm grip of China. It's a known fact. They have been there for 30 years. And press writes openly this takeover did not happen without Chinese approval. I mean, if you look at the press. So my whole issue is if India has to make a choice, do you, whatever security leverage you seem to have by being, whatever, diplomatically, how much you're losing Bangladesh in the process? You have to make choices. You can't always be equally good with two neighbors when two are very different category of neighbors, right? So from
Right.
Bangladesh side, we did not feel the Indian stance was strong enough. I'm being very blunt about it. And
Yes,
these,
but there is real politic and there's real diplomacy and there is bilateral relations. Both have to be weighed accordingly, don't you think? Let me bring in Dev Mukherjee on this point, sir. What is your opinion on what Professor Munir is saying?
No, I look, as I said earlier, in terms of any yardstick, any compass, any moral compass that you wish to look at in terms of human rights or whatever, what is happening to the Rohingyas is unacceptable or should be
True.
unacceptable. But the world itself really has not shown itself to be particularly concerned, which is a disgrace. And as I said, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes in diplomacy, but I'm sure India would have taken it up suitably with Yangon, and I hope they will continue to do so. But as long as Yangon has the solid, unqualified support of its northern neighbor, and as you know, even the ASEAN countries who are so close to Myanmar, they are not happy with what's going on. They have tried to persuade Yangon to mend its ways vis-a-vis the Rohingyas. They have not succeeded so far. So it has to be a concerted effort by all countries in the neighborhood, not just India, but also countries to the east of Myanmar, countries in the ASEAN, to persuade Myanmar to act in a humane manner towards its own citizens.
Yes, just to tell our viewers that the visuals you see on your screen, these are not live visuals, these are file visuals of a previous visit. Um, uh, Sheikh Hasina is yet to visit or meet with the Prime Minister. Of course, we have the rival visuals and we will show them to you shortly. But let me just come back to Professor Munir and talk about the Rohingya issue and even on the Tista issue. So clearly Sheikh Hasina is coming to India and this meeting with Modi, and there's a lot of expectation. A, help on the Rohingya issue. B, also on the Tista water sharing issue. She said that she's very hopeful that the issue will get resolved this time, and that India should show more generosity, is what
yes,
she said. That generosity, of course, India has its own set of problems, and how are the people back home? This whole I understand because Sheikh Hasina is coming up for re-election next year. There is a parliamentary election next year, which and there is already the opposition is making a lot of noise about her coming to India, about her sort of being friends with India, so to speak, because this is really the our relationship at this point, India and Bangladesh it is at a very good level. How do you see the back home? What's happening? This India Bangladesh bonhomie is not really going down well with the opposition or with people. What's happening?
To be honest with you, I mean, in the piece I wrote for one of your well-known Hindu, I mentioned one thing. One of the things when I've met our Indian friends, either foreign minister, foreign secretary, and we had a very free, frank, informal chat we have had over dinner, lunch, tea, whatever. One of the things which very at times was voiced by our Indian friends that in spite of a lot of things we have done, why we don't feel that the level of friendship or positivity flowing from Bangladesh is not the level we expect. It's a very common thing which I've heard many, many times in the informal chat. I
True.
think because one of the thing is, I mean, of course, I mean, Sir would know better. He has been more in the diplomatic circle than I have been. In Bangladesh, there is by and large, rightly or wrongly, I don't have any data to back it up. There's a perceptual level that this bonhomie or attachment is one particular political thought or party than with mainstream Bangladeshis, which I think is not necessarily very healthy because relationship should be with the country, with its people, irrespective of which strata of society you are. It's a difficult perceptual challenge. It's not that easy to remove. It's not that you and I have a good conversation and next day it will change. But I
Hmm.
personally felt, and even used to listen some of the remarks that came in the newspaper, quite could have stayed in both sides. Some of the remarks which we all felt was unnecessary by some of our from Bangladesh side. So that only feeds into that belief. Oh, okay, fine. So this is about pre-election garnering support. That's what's floating around. How much is correct, right, or wrong? I don't know. But that's and sometimes perception unfortunately becomes reality. So, I mean, that's the feeling. So, for India, I personally believe you are the largest democracy with a great tradition, culture, civilization. You have so much to offer, not only to the subcontinent, to the world at large. It would be a diplomatic challenge to navigate a course where you, for all our South Asian countries, because all of us have a fair
Right.
share of challenge with democracy, that you are the epitome of democratic practices and diplomatic nuances across all spectrum. So that automatically spills over two issues we alluded to. I will not go into that until you break it up. The issue of Hindus and Muslim. So that's a separate chapter. So all thing comes together. So I think it would be good for India to take a long-term horizon relationship with a country with whom it shares more than 4,000 kilometers of border. So we are strategically very important for India. And to come a long-term approach as opposed to this election, that election, which government, we tend to get too much muddled into short-sighted thing, losing the far-sighted vision. That would be my quick
Hmm.
response to a very important point that you have raised.
Because it's historically been seen that whenever the BNP government has been there, India's really not been on top of their, you know, they don't really seem to like India a lot or relations with India, and which is why, hence my question. Professor Mukherjee, would you like to sort of weigh in on that? Because we spoke about this earlier.
You ask me?
Yes, sir.
No, look, Aditi, I think what Professor Khusro said is unquestionably right. But I really cannot go into a 10-minute recounting of my experience and India's experience over the past 20 years, except that I can affirm with absolute conviction, certainty, and knowledge that India has always tried to reach out to the BNP when it was in government.
Hmm.
The response was, as in fact mentioned in Professor Khusro's article, I think, this morning,
Right, right,
the
right.
response was 10 truckloads of weapons for the ULFA unloaded in Chittagong, for which, about which the then Home Minister and the then chiefs of intelligence are under sentence of death right now in Bangladesh. So that is the problem with BNP. Why they do that is another discussion. This is not the time for it.
True.
Now, where I would agree that the perception that goes around, the perception that is deliberately created, is that India deals only with the Awami League. I would recall my interview with what was then Bhored Kagoj. After I joined as High Commissioner, the same question was put to me in 1995 when BNP was in power. And I said, India deals with all governments elected by the people. That's it. It is another matter that because of historical reasons and 1971, India had a special bondage with the Awami League. But over the years, BNP has, of its own volition, chosen to stay away from India. Now, since you asked the question, and since Professor Kabir has mentioned it, I think what is necessary for India is not trying to prove that it is equal with all political parties. It cannot do that because it takes two to clap. But what it must do, which it may be doing, is to reach out to the wider public
Right.
so that the public knows that India's interests lies in the welfare of Bangladesh,
Absolutely.
regardless of political parties.
No, I
I
agree
think
with
that,
you.
I
BNP,
think that is the answer.
I agree with you. BNP, all of us felt, did not do a proper job handling relation with India, no doubt about it. I wrote about it very strongly today. It was a mess up, and which led to legitimate concern and reaction from India, no doubt about it. What happened in particular 2001-6, which was the lowest period of relationship. And the country, the party itself finds this is struggling to regain the confidence is lost. Absolutely, I'm 100% with you. But as you said in the last statement, that which echoes my sentiment, I'll give you a very simple example. And just to, I prefer simplifying complex things. Many times when I go to Indian High Commission reception and other things, I've told the High Commissioners, why do I always see people who are socially branded as pro-Indians? Why can't you have more people in your receptions and parties who are generally well-meaning citizens who love their country and who are equally friendly to Indian? I'll give you a very simple example. In many of the receptions and dinner I go, so I'm being very honest about it. So it doesn't help. I mean, you also need to connect with males who are neither BNP nor Awami League, well-intended Bangladeshi citizens who really want a good relation with India, just like I do. So you're very right in pointing what BNP has done, 100%. At the same time, India also needs to find a way to navigate. And there are many, many very seasoned diplomats like you who have a lot of wisdom to do that. And I'm sure it's going to happen in the future. As you very correctly said, you agree with some of my observations. So let's hope it happens. Yeah, back to you.
Yes, you started talking about, and that's the last thing that I'm going to discuss, because that those were visuals on your screen or of Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in Delhi today, earlier in the day, visiting or meeting with our Foreign Minister S. Shankar. Clearly, the talks have already started. She's going to be here for the next 3 days. But let me just quickly, ask a question to Professor Munir. She's coming to India. She's coming to India with a lot of baggage. The one baggage, of course, is the spate of attacks done, by Islamists on Bangladesh's Hindus during the last Durga Puja, this Janmashtami, and I think there were some more attacks in between. There have been well-planned communal rumors that have been doing the rounds. Hindus have been killed, their houses have been burnt. That's one set of baggage, and the other, of course, is Bangladesh's economy not doing very well. She's approached the IMF for a phased $4.5 billion loan. There are fears of a Sri Lanka-like meltdown. Now, given these two reasons, how do you see this playing out, Professor Munir? Because she has to assure the Indian side that the Hindus are not being persecuted in Bangladesh, as it appears, suddenly to become more the norm. Would you take that?
Yeah, sure. Let me put it this way. I mean, since we are having very free and frank conversations, um, Bangladeshis, I think everyone more or less agrees, by and large, is a very tolerant, progressive society. We are not like many of other Muslim majority neighbors that you see. And
Right.
even I grew up in a neighborhood where right and left my neighbors were Hindus, and with this puja and Eid, it was very easily flowing. I mean, they would come and
True.
have lunch, dinner. So whatever episodes you refer to, and happens in any country. But and if I may, with all my humility, ask, we have seen what has happened to Muslims in India. We have seen
True.
in so, and we have seen, and the way our government has moved quickly, cracked down, tracked down. We haven't seen same kind of quick action by the Indian governments in those states. I'll be very frank about it. And let me ask you, if there was a bill in the Parliament of Bangladesh that any persecuted minorities in Bangladesh's neighborhood are welcome to apply, other than Hindus, how does it sound?
Okay, so now we're
Yeah,
moving
yeah,
towards the
yes,
Citizenship
yes. So
Amendment Act.
when we are being asked this question, we also very fairly going by facts can ask the same question that those are things happening. It should not happen in either side of the border. And Bangladesh, one good thing, this government has moved very quickly. Whenever, if you look at how they have tracked down, put them on the run, we haven't seen same level of action on the Indian side. And some very disrespectful comments also went, some later on some actions were taken, but initially Bangladesh kept quiet. So we are also as Muslim as sensitive as Hindus are, and people in India also have to understand and respect that. I'm being very frank about it.
I,
So it's
and no, you're being frank, but I also want to bring up here that there has action has been taken. It's not that it's not been taken. There is that the police has been taking action against all the miscreants, and there has been a crackdown on wherever these things. Because this Hindu Muslim thing, unfortunately, in our polity and in our civic, this will always happen, and this has been happening from time immemorial, actually ever since partition. So unfortunately, I don't want to say it, but we're now living with it every day, and perhaps forced to live with it for the next few decades. But Dev Mukherjee, how do you weigh in? Because this is a. Do you think the Indian government is going to bring this issue up with Prime Minister Hasina when they speak to her?
Two observations here. Again, since we're all being candid, Aditi, I'm afraid, given our own record, which I've been writing about, I don't believe we are really in a position to take this matter up.
Okay.
Okay. Secondly, I would like to commend the present government of Bangladesh for the very quick action that it took after the anti-Hindu troubles that took place around Durga Puja last year. And the Prime Minister herself went public and said that let no one make any mistake, but this country belongs to everyone, or something on those lines. So I think the effort has been there on the part of Bangladesh government, but as you both said, and I agree, there is an underlying poison. But in Bangladesh, there seems to be an effort by the present government to suppress that and not encourage it.
I'm so
Okay.
thankful, sir, you said that because we haven't seen such a statement from Indian side. Did we see an Indian state government come and say that it belongs equally to Hindus and Muslims? We didn't. So I'm very grateful you mentioned that. So we haven't seen such bold, clear statement from Indian side, which is a fact. That would have sent, and why, if you look at figure, it is this your internal matter. I don't want to be seen, since Aditi raised it in any case. If you talk to general Muslims in India, they're not comfortable. A lot of them are leaving country. So it's not that, at least in Bangladesh, as Ved sir very correctly mentioned, our prime minister has been very strong that she's not going to put up with this kind of nuisance, and law enforcement move very quickly. We hope going move, India would do something similar to assure the Muslims in that part. It's an internal matter, but just you are asking question our internal matter. I'm
Right.
reciprocating the same.
No, no, fair enough. Let me just also, because I think I've overshot our time. It has been very interesting talking to you. I've taken only half an hour from you, but I've already exceeded that by a couple of minutes. But let me just, take one last response from each of you on a very simple thing that, defense, water sharing. How hopeful are you? And economic thing. How relations. How hopeful are you of positive outcomes, and what sort of outcomes are you expecting from this summit between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Sheikh Hasina? And let me start with you, Professor Munir first, and then Dr. Dev Mukherjee.
No, I mean, I personally am very optimistic, and as Sir has mentioned very correctly, there are a lot of things that we have built relationship in, and I, as a Bangladeshi, I would hope this become irreversible. We don't want to go back, and whoever comes in power, we don't want to go back, losing the connectivity, losing the boost in trade, energy, whatever cooperation we are doing. But some of the issues which you very rightly raise, Aditi, are issues in the back of the mind. So the more we can get over those things, and as Sir very correctly said, two neighbors will always have some problem.
Niggling
So
issues, but yeah, it's our thing to sort them out and sort of
yes,
progress
yes,
and prosper together.
yes, absolutely. Because we have a long shared history in terms of culture, And Bangladesh, when we got liberated, India was the country which stood by us, which we always record with a lot of gratitude. So our relationship started with blood relationship. Indians sacrificed lives, and Bangladeshi, you know what happened during 71. So we have a lot of strong roots. Whatever may have happened in the immediate aftermath, we have moved beyond that, aftermath of independence. So the challenge is that political leadership, both countries are wise enough to realize that, it takes two to tango, and we have no option but to keep on sort of coming together, getting together. And these sort of talks, I think, is part of their growing maturity. With that, I think I'm hopeful this trip will lead to resolution of some of the issues, if not all. As Sir very correctly said, you can't have one state visit resolve all outstanding issues, but each time some progress is one step forward. So I continue to remain an optimist, and the fact that we can speak so freely, frankly, is a good sign that good friends, good neighbors talk it out, don't sort of put it behind the pillow and bury it. So I think the fact that we are talking in such a free and frank manner, we are appreciating each other, is a good sign. Over to you, sir.
No, I agree with you. And I think we are going through a good phase in our relations, and we should, I think, take this opportunity to create new areas of cooperation, collaboration for the future. And that seems to be happening, and I'm very happy that it is. And I hope that this visit of Prime Minister Hasina contributes to that, to encouraging that, and to furthering these interactions for the future.
All
Let's
right.
hope so.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope to see you both again, maybe on the last day of a visit when there are a number of deals that are signed. I'd love to. I mean, right now we are being clairvoyant about most of the things that we say might happen. This might happen. That might happen. We'll have more clarity. And I'd love to have you both back with us on that day, which is the day after tomorrow, where we can talk about what actually happened and analyze that as we go forward. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you,
Thank
viewers, for
you.
watching this
Thank you.
podcast.
Always a pleasure, Aditi. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Bye
luck,
bye.
Professor
Bye.
Khosrow.
My respect and regard.